What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well. And I know it's maybe a little bit early to make this video. I know that it's a little bit early to have this conversation because the Seattle Seahawks season is not yet over. The Seattle Seahawks have one more game to play, and we got to get through that before we get to these kinds of conversations. And normally, I would allow the season to actually end before I truly open up on these kinds of conversations. But here's the thing. First of all, we already kind of know what kind of season the Seahawks are going to have. The one remaining game can only do so much to change it. In this circumstance, it actually has a relatively minimal ability to swing anybody. Like, we will not be able to look at whatever happens in this game on Sunday and say, well, I now feel better about this. I now feel comfortable with that. Because the circumstances are such that we can only take so much from it. So if you are somebody who maybe you're not high on somebody like Reek Woolen right now. Maybe you're not a big fan of Reek Woolen. If Reek Woolen goes out there and plays the game of his life against Jimmy Garoppolo on Sunday, you're probably not going to be that moved by it. So we kind of already know the score. And second of all, these things move quickly. So if I'm going to have something to say about some of these pieces on this team that could go one way or the other in terms of the front office and coaching staff, it needs to be said now. Black Monday is the day after the regular season ends. And a lot of people get fired or let go on Black Monday. So by the time I process my thoughts, post a video, record a video, and upload a video on Monday, the discussed move may have already happened. And whatever I'm discussing is moot because the move has already been made. So I want to have a few of these conversations now. I want to discuss some of this stuff before we actually get to Black Monday because I don't want to record a video and schedule it to upload on Monday, and then an hour before the video goes live, the move happens, and everything I discuss ends up being kind of pointless. So, with all that being said, I want to take a video before the season ends here, right at the end of the season though, to discuss John Schneider and whether or not he should maybe be let go this offseason. And that's quite a thing to say. That's quite a bold proclamation to make, but I think there's a decent chunk of this fan base that wants to at least entertain the possibility. So let's understand why. On the most basic level, this season was a disappointment for some people because we didn't make the playoffs. Some people live in a headspace where everything is in a vacuum. And every season is an opportunity to either be a playoff team and make a playoff run or to not do those things. And to not do it is always disappointing, and to do it is always a success. So if you are somebody who lives and dies only by does the team make the playoffs, you weren't thrilled with the way this year went. But it's more than just this one year, right? We're talking about several years now of being in this 7 to 10 win window, right? We won 12 games in 2020. That was the COVID year. We won 11 games the year before. But since that COVID year, we've been 7, 9, 9, 10. And technically that is moving in the right direction, but it is so slow, it's hard to get really amped about it. But there's some specifics we can get to as well, right? We can go beyond just what is going on with the team in a broad sense. So there are a few things going on with John Schneider. Number one, I think the main thing that people are hanging on to right now when it comes to John Schneider frustration is his offensive line philosophy. He went out and said, and maybe he was making it up, maybe he was just messing around, maybe he was trying to mislead people, but what he said seems to line up with his philosophy when it comes to running this football team. He said that he doesn't think interior offensive linemen are valuable. And that is something that really set a lot of this fan base on fire, because it's one thing to not have good interior offensive linemen, which we have mostly not had in recent years. But it is quite another thing to say, well, we don't have good interior offensive line players because I don't value them. I think they get paid too much. I think they get drafted too high. So the reason why we don't have those things is a feature. It's not a bug. I don't want those players. That's essentially what he said boiled down to. And a lot of the fan base saw those comments, saw the offensive line he put together this year, and yeah, like it's not a baseless position at all. The other thing, and this is something that people are also starting to really get into, the free agency period of this most recent offseason. The free agency the Seattle Seahawks had in March, April, May, all the way through to, well, I guess August, right? The free agency that John Schneider had was as bad can be. And that is a big part of the reason why we're not in the playoffs right now. If John Schneider had even an average return on his free agency investments, we would almost certainly be a playoff team right now. Tyrell Dodson and Jerome Baker, the two guys he signed to be our starting linebackers, were both off the team by the halfway point of the season. Didn't work at all. Didn't mesh at all with the defense we were running. And we ended up replacing them with Ernest Jones, who, I mean, he's good, but he's physically limited, and a rookie. And those guys looked far better. So, two disastrous signings right there. Laviska Shenault never really did anything except for a kick return touchdown against the 49ers. You've got Connor Williams, who maybe that's not John Schneider's fault, but he did retire halfway through the season after playing mediocre at best football. Laken Tomlinson, I guess he was worth the money, but his presence on the team remains emblematic of the issues with how John Schneider looks at interior offensive line players. So while it wasn't a terrible signing, it did kind of put a spotlight on Schneider's, what do you want to call it, a blind spot? You've got Kayvon Wallace and Rayshawn Jenkins, two safeties that he signed that didn't work out. And look, it wouldn't be that bad, except for the fact that you had a much better safety sitting right there on your bench in Kobe Bryant, and he couldn't get on the field because when the season started, Rayshawn and Kayvon were ahead of him. And then it took you about half the year to find out that, wait a minute, the best option is the guy who was behind both those guys. And he was here the whole time. He was here on a rookie deal. You didn't have to sign him. Now, Kayvon and Rayshawn both got hurt. That's probably part of the reason why they didn't make an impact this year, but that signing did not work out. Pharaoh Brown has made no real meaningful impact on this team at all. I don't even think he's been a very good blocker. You've got bringing back Noah Fant. Not a bad player, but not worth the money we gave him, not worth the investment we made. Like, other than re-signing Leonard Williams, which I would argue is a no-brainer, the free agency last year, it's hard to do worse. I wonder if there's another team in the NFL that got less bang for their buck in free agency last year. And it is last year now because we are now 2 days into 2025. But that's two recent things that has happened with John Schneider that has some people wondering a little bit. And look, the recent drafts have been really great. 2022 draft was great. 2023 draft was great. 2024 is too early. That one could end up going bad, but so far I think it looks pretty good, but we need far more information than we have right now. So I'm not going to speculate too much there. But overall, the point of separating Pete Carroll from John Schneider was to figure out how much of the previous 14 years was Pete Carroll and how much of it was John Schneider. Now, we still need some more evidence to really make a conclusion here, but some of the stuff seems like Schneider and Carroll were kind of in sync on. Some of the stuff they weren't, but I feel like there are some things that kind of were the main reasons why this team didn't get top of the line success in the Pete Carroll years. And you have John Schneider's blind spots when it comes to being a GM, and it seems like there's overlap. It seems like it. I can't guarantee it yet, but it feels like there's a little bit going on there. So while John Schneider has done some very good things while he's been here, including recently, I think that there is a little bit of an urgency from some of the fan base to find a different route, a different path. But there are a couple problems with this. And while I would not have a problem with John Schneider being put on the hot seat, I don't think you can fire him yet. And the main reason why is because the timing doesn't really make sense. Okay? You just hired a new head coach, and that new head coach looks like he's the right guy. So far, so good with McDonald. Not perfect, but he looks like he's the right guy. So, John Schneider hired or played a big role in hiring McDonald. So, number one, it would be kind of weird if you fired a GM the year after he made what seems to be a very successful head coaching hire that is clearly meant for a long term. Mike McDonald is meant to be here for a long time. This is not some one and done or two and done situation where you bring in a guy as a mercenary to win a quick championship and then you're going to move him out of there. It would be kind of weird. And beyond just being weird, if you bring in a new general manager, there is a very good chance that new general manager will want his own head coach. And it's nothing about McDonald. He could like McDonald, he still might want his own coach. That's how a lot of these guys operate. If the team wins a Super Bowl, they want to take all the credit for it. And if a GM comes in here to replace Schneider, that GM keeps McDonald, and the Seahawks win a Super Bowl in the next couple years, then how much credit is the GM going to get? He's going to get some, but a lot of these guys, they want all the credit. Look at how long Jerry Jones has been at least in partial, if not complete control of the Dallas Cowboys, despite them not winning anything. Because if they ever do win, he wants to be the guy who gets to take all the credit for it now. Because he knows that it's often said that he doesn't deserve any credit for their 3 Super Bowls early on in his tenure, so he wants to win one more to prove that, hey, I can do this. That's more important to him than actually increasing his chances of winning. A lot of these guys are like that. So, would you be willing to get rid of John Schneider if it means getting rid of McDonald, getting back on the coaching carousel, and hoping your next hire is as good? I'd say most Seahawks fans would not make that trade. Now, maybe you could find a GM that wanted to keep McDonald, but then you're limiting your net. You're limiting your search. You have to cross names off that might be really good names because, they don't want to keep McDonald. So you are limiting your ability to find the best guy possible. Maybe if you wanted to promote somebody who's underneath Schneider to the general manager position, it might work, but then you kind of run into the same problem. What if John Schneider's protege is just going to do the same things? What if the guy that you replace John Schneider with just learned everything he knows from John Schneider? What's so great about that? And overall, if you were going to fire John Schneider, I think that the time to do it was pretty clearly last season when you fired Carroll. It would have made sense to do them both at the same time, and that way you start completely fresh. But we didn't do that. So I think that when you choose not to do that, you kind of have to say, barring a complete disaster, we are going to ride with this group for at least a little bit longer. We are going to give Schneider at least a couple of years. And maybe after year 2 of Mike McDonald, if McDonald still seems like he's doing good, but Schneider isn't giving him enough to work with, maybe then you say, well, we got to try. How long are we going to allow Schneider to have these lackluster free agency periods, especially if he has another one? How long are we going to allow this to continue to go the way that it goes? Maybe then you get desperate enough to try something crazy, but I don't think this team is in a state of desperation right now. So, assuming this team gets to 10 wins on Sunday, I think they can live with that. There's been a lot of discussion lately among the fans and among the beat writers, the people who talk about this team professionally or for fun, about whether or not the Seahawks ownership and brass considers this season to be a success. And I'm not sure they do. I would admit that. But I also don't think that they need to view it as such a failure that they need to get rid of the guy at the top. I think it's possible. I wouldn't hate it if they did it. I would understand it. I would say that Schneider has made enough mistakes to warrant the move, but I also wouldn't say that his track record is so bad that it demands a firing. I'm just not there yet. I can get there pretty quickly, I think. I could definitely get there this time next year, maybe even before this time next year, maybe later this year. But I don't think you can fire John Schneider after 1 year of McDonald. I don't want to get back on the carousel already. And I'm sure John Schneider is going to do some things this offseason that I'm not a big fan of. I'm sure there are going to be some things that he does that don't make a lot of sense to me and annoy me. But at the same time, there are some things that he's proven, even in recent years where the team has not been great, that he is still good at, that he can still do. And I, I just feel like I'd rather keep him here and give him a chance to try to get to the next level with this group. And hopefully he only needs 1 more year to do that. Because I don't think this team is that far away right now. I don't. And if John Schneider cannot get this team to the next level in this offseason, given what they're likely to need, then I think that might be the point where I have to say, you're just not good enough at this anymore. It's just not working, and I want to go a different direction. But I'm going to hold off on that. All right? To some extent, he's still living off how great the Russell Wilson trade was. I get that. He's made plenty of mistakes since then. He's also done some good things since then, too. That's probably the main reason why he's still here and Pete is not. He masterminded the Russell Wilson trade. Pete Carroll tried to stop the Russell Wilson trade. But that's the world we live in. And I'm willing to give this another year personally. I'm not advocating for him to get fired yet. I'm not there. Let me know what you guys think, though. This is a conversation worth having. I think it's perfectly defensible to say the other way. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Sound off on John Schneider.